Hey there.
Hello.
Hi.
I can see people. Can people see me?
Yes.
Hey everybody, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So it looks like everybody is here. I know Karen is probably not going to be able to make it tonight. She would have to recuse for the Pentair application. And I haven't heard from Brian either. But it is 5:33, so we can go ahead and get started. Abby, I have your application on second for the agenda. You're welcome to hang out or turn your video off, whatever is best for you.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn my video off.
All right, so up first on the agenda is AP 21-0063. This is an administrative permit to amend the existing permit. This project is currently under construction. The permit is to do a couple things: add skylights, add basement windows, egress windows, and choose any window brand that complies with the window type that was approved. For location purposes, let me pull up the map. This property is located between Slate Barn Drive and Lambert Lane. It was created under a two-lot subdivision, so 7997 was the historic house. That's its own separate parcel now. It's not part of this application. The new driveway just went in, and where you see this white square in the photo, that's the old shed. That's roughly where the new house is currently being built today in the village. Matt made an opinion letter about this application. This opinion letter is important for our meeting tonight because it lays out where the HAAC's authority lies with when an amendment is being proposed. Primarily, a decision will have to be made about the skylights and the egress windows. The component about the change of window brand, Matt made the determination that that change can be made administratively. Our bylaw regulates size and location of windows in terms of the historic design review. It doesn't regulate specific branding. So this just clarifies that material. The windows that are still being proposed, same size, same location, same divided light pattern, just a different brand. So I'll go over to my staff report. The HAAC will need to make a recommendation tonight on the skylights. I've proposed two recommendations. one, to recommend against them, or two, wait until the framing is complete. I spoke with Doug this morning and he did request some current site photos. So I went out today and took some photos. In my staff report, I included that Google screen share that showed the brown barn. That's removed and the duplex is currently under construction. This is a view northeast. You can see the walls are up. This is it backed out a little bit further to capture the sidewalk. And then this is the view from between 76th and 102 Slate Barn Drive. The roof pitch for the most part will be on that north-south, one roof facing north and the other side facing south, roughly. Going back to the staff report, so the first thing is skylights. The second thing is egress windows. Staff is recommending approval as proposed. Adding egress windows to the basement is a minor change. I read through chapter 42 and the design review guide and didn't see anything in there that would preclude a new building to have egress windows, especially where they would be not visible from the public way.
So Emily, maybe we take up each one individually. First of all, either you or Alex maybe can just, for the benefit of all of us, explain what an egress window is and how many there will be on the north side of the building.
Sure. Emily, do you have that the drawing that shows the north side that I had submitted with the application? That you
Yes.
are you able to pull that up on your screen?
Yes. Yeah, Alex, feel free to have me jump around.
Yeah. So if you look here, all the way at the bottom, you'll see those two. Here we go. Yep. So if you see those two dark black lines at the bottom, the egress windows are essentially a well, sort of a window well dug into the ground that allows us to put a window into the foundation. So essentially, at some point, somebody could finish the basement. Those egress windows are required for fire code. It was essentially an oversight from our architect as we were putting these designs together, and an unfortunate oversight. But without them, the basements would not be allowed to be finished at some point in the future. So essentially, there's nothing that sticks up above the ground aside from maybe a 2 to 3 inch lip. There's a number of different ways to construct them. The most common one is sort of this half circle plastic well that you install into the ground. That's probably 3 feet away from the foundation, and then that allows natural light to come in and space for egress in an emergency.
Great, thank you. Does anyone on the board have any comments, questions about the two egress windows?
No, I don't. I think they'd be almost invisible unless you're standing right on top of them.
Yep, exactly.
So the draft certificate of appropriateness basically says we recommend approval. Is everybody good with that on the egress window issue?
Yep.
Chelsea, any questions? You're the newbie. Oh, you're muted, Chelsea, actually.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
No,
Emily, you are too.
I don't think I have any questions. My only question would be about, is that the only location for them? That's the front of the house, correct? So where you walk in?
That's the back of the house.
That's the back of the house. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah.
Which is really the north side, right?
Yeah. The side that sort of faces the bike path.
Yeah, right.
Jim, I can't read your lips. You're muted.
There we go. Oh, it says you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Hey, Jim, can you hear us? Can you give us a thumbs up if you can hear us?
Okay, we can't seem to hear you. I think you're on, I see you're on two devices. Are your headphones plugged in? To which one are they plugged into?
Zoom
Jim,
does have backs.
I wonder if it would make sense to just try leaving the meeting and rejoining. On cool.
So I think to keep things moving, maybe we can enter into the skylight decision, and if Jim gets his technology figured out, if he's got a comment on the egress windows, he can chime in at the end.
You can type a comment too.
Yeah, Jim, if you're able to use the chat, you should see it on the toolbar. I guess maybe we can start going over the skylights and then when Jim returns.
So I guess I'll start in reading Matt's opinion. Basically, the development bylaw does not allow skylights where they can be seen from a public way in this district. So I think the only question is if we can see those from Slate Barn, we don't have any choice but to not allow them. So I'm not sure, based on Emily's photos, the roof's not on yet. I don't know if houses maybe in the other houses on Slate Barn or trees may obstruct the view. So I'm not sure I would offer an opinion. In the certificate of the draft certificate of appropriateness, there's an option for us to include wording that says the zoning administrator shall make the decision on skylights when the framing, roof and walls is complete. So I'm not sure. I'm good with that, but I'll open it up for, again, discussion on the issue of the two skylights proposed.
And I'm happy to add a couple things, if I may. Emily, can you pull up that photo again?
Yes.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry, the one that I submitted with the drawing. Sorry, I wasn't.
Okay.
Clear. Yeah, so if this again is looking from the north side, from the bike path. The window, the proposed skylight on the right, we just don't know. So I think they're starting to put the floor system in for the second floor. I think within 2 to 3 weeks, we'd have enough of a roof framing up that we could probably tell pretty well if anything's visible from Slate Barn Drive. The dormer that's in the middle that are two upstairs bedrooms, I think are significantly going to block the skylight on the left side, and I'm sure that you can't see that from Lambert Lane because Lambert Lane just doesn't go down that far. So this building being a duplex, we're actually okay with a skylight on one side and not the other if it's not visible. But if we need to wait a few weeks to get the roof system up and then see what trees are blocked, where we can see it, we're absolutely okay with that.
I like the concept of waiting till the framing's up. I think Alex makes a good point about the skylight on the left as we look at it. May very well pass. The one on the right is still in question. But if we wait till the framing, I don't think that's a major imposition.
No.
And we can get a more accurate assessment. And if they show, then unfortunately the answer is no.
That's fine. That's the case, yeah.
I did try to drive by this lot today, getting my son from school, and we actually drove by it twice because it's kind of tricky. So we went up like both Slate Barn, and I was like, "Where is this? Where is this lot we're discussing?" So I agree. I think it might be helpful when it's frame because it's really hard to know where to stop for like the vantage points, just given that kind of where the lot is located.
We're also, this is actually a great drawing to pull up because you can see sort of the building there, and then there's that one large tree, which you could see in Emily's photo that she took today. But we are doing a significant number of plantings around the perimeter. You know, again, I think that waiting to see where the roof ends up being in a few weeks will definitely tell us one way or the other pretty easily.
Yeah, and I like the option of approving just one skylight if that's all that's realistic.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
So I think we just need to, excuse me, decide if we want to put the analysis and determination on the planning and zoning staff when to go out when it's being framed and take another look and make the determination there. I'm not sure. I need to go out and look at it. It's going to be, I think, fairly obvious. The other option is to reconvene, you know, and we each individually do site visit in a few weeks.
The staff seems pretty professional about this. I would trust their judgment.
I would concur. Yes.
Hey, Jim, we can hear you now. Good to you.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't have anything to add regarding the skylights. I apologize. I do want to go back to the egress windows, but let's finish this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So Chelsea, are you good with the option 2 recommendation on the screen that we're relying on staff to make this final?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think we're back to the egress window, Jim.
Yes. You still able to hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had some questions about 2 things. One, Emily H. This looks like it's going from a 1,700 square foot apartment to possibly a 2,000 or more. And my understanding was it was approved for 1,700 and some odd feet up to a little bit more. Is there any impact on that, putting in these egress windows, literally allowing for the creation of more space, or isn't that an issue?
In zoning, that's not an issue. That is considered a regular, for a future finished basement, that's a regular activity. Our zoning looks at density in terms of studio 1-bedroom units counting as a half dwelling unit and a 2+ bedroom unit counting as a full dwelling unit equivalent. So there wouldn't be any implications for the residential density, the growth management score. This future, it makes sense to put in egress windows now because adding them in after the fact is probably
totally
cost
agree.
prohibitive.
Well, not
so
only
it
that,
gives,
it could damage the structure. Yeah.
yeah, so it gives the flexibility in the future. And then because our bylaw doesn't look at bedrooms in that way in terms of density or intensity of use, adding a finished basement or another bedroom would just be an administrative permit in the future.
Would that include adding a bathroom down there?
Correct. So typically when the floor plan is changing inside a home, that requires an administrative permit throughout Williston.
Okay.
Because any of those changes would be happening on the interior, they would not be subject to design review. So in the future, if a permit comes in to finish the basement, whether that's just a playroom where they're adding bedrooms and bathrooms, that would be purely approved by Matt, the administrator. It would be an interior thing and not subject to design review. It would not go back
Okay.
to the HAAC.
All right. And then I know when we moved here, we had to have radon testing if we were even considering having use of the basement. Is that applicable here?
Not in terms of zoning. Alex might be able to speak to that if the state has anything.
I know that they have installed underneath the slab radon tubes, you know, to give ventilation. You know, at this point, we're just applying. We just want to be able to put in the egress windows so that in the future, someone else has an easier time to submit an application to finish the basement. And at that point, you know, that would be under their purview. We're not applying for that. Just
Fair
want to
enough.
give people the option.
Fair enough. Those are the only questions I had.
Okay.
I think we're done here. Emily, unless we missed something, do you have what you need?
I think so, yeah. I updated the recommendation to be option 2. The zoning administrator shall make the decision on skylights when the framing, roof, and walls is complete, and egress windows are approvable as proposed. And this will go to the DRB next week on the 22nd.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you,
Good luck.
everyone.
You're welcome.
All right. Good night, Alex.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
All right. So, Abby, if you can hear us, we're getting ready to queue up your application. I can get the document.
Yes.
Yep. Cool.
How's the weather in San Francisco, Abby?
Oh, it's lovely. This is actually taken pre-forest fire. The sky is clear.
Mm,
Unless, I mean, if you want to see my playroom, I can turn off this fake background.
No, it's okay.
right now that would be covered with smog
I know.
from the fires.
Yeah, we're getting some of it over here.
That's what I saw.
Cool.
So
All
we're
right.
going through,
Yeah.
sorry, we're going to be going through the matrix of, well, some apply, some don't apply. This is pre-app, meaning this is conceptual. But Emily, do you want to give a quick overview of what's going on? And Abby, you can fill in where Emily leaves off, and then we'll get right into the HAAC review summary that I have in front of me here.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, so a quick overview on the map. This property is located off of Route 2A, Essex Road, or St. George Road, in the Taft Center zoning district. Currently, there's this existing 3-story building with a lot of parking. It has 2 points of access on the northwest corner. They're proposing to add access to the south. There is a newly constructed segment of multi-use path along the right-of-way to the front. Pull up the site plan. So the building is proposed to be located on between the existing building and the road, 7,600 square footprint, 2-story. They're going to add a 1-way right turn only access to the south of the building. They're proposing a couple parking spaces along the south side of the building. There will be a plaza along the northwest corner. So this building is going to be TD Bank and a restaurant. The existing building will remain office space, and they're adding some retail. It's only this new structure that is changing in terms of needing design review.
Okay. I'm going to stop you right there, Emily, just so I understand. TD Bank is now in the big building behind it, right?
It is.
So this will also be another TD Bank.
This will be in exchange. So TD Bank will move out of the larger building and into this smaller building.
Okay, and then a restaurant as well, potentially.
Potentially, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
There's 2 tenant spaces proposed for the first floor and 2 tenant spaces proposed for the second floor right now. On the first floor, they're expecting TD Bank to occupy one of the tenant spaces, and then the other tenant space on the first floor to be some form of restaurant. while the second floor will be office space.
So TD Bank is giving up on a drive-through teller service like they currently have.
Right, and they're exchanging it for an drive-through ATM kiosk, which will be located on the north side of the existing building. And there's a tiny square because it's small, right?
Mhm.
I'm just surprised they're doing that with all the drive-up banking that's been happening for the last several months. But that's their choice.
So that's the new kiosk that Emily pointed to?
Yep.
So you don't pull up to it, you don't pull up to it as a parallel spot, you just park and get out and,
It's set up to pull up to it, so the driver's side window lines up with the kiosk. And there's there's like a 3-car queue space behind it.
oh, I'm sorry, no, I was looking at it wrong.
And then we have a pass-by lane on the right.
No, I see that now, sorry.
Mhm.
Sorry, Emily, we kind of interrupted. Are you
All good.
would offer?
Good to clarify.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the building that they're proposing is going to be 2 stories. This is pre-app, so full elevations are not prepared at this time. We'll be giving general feedback. This is a proposed perspective, looking something similar to buildings down the road. Let me pull up their narrative letter. There we go. So down the road is lot 30, where Aspen Dental Panera Bread is located. So they would be proposing something similar, various windows sizes, some inset on the first floor perhaps, a variety of materials. Abby, I assume there'll be the same materials on all 4 sides of the building. There won't be
Right,
any
yep.
dead
Yep,
walls.
The facade will wrap around the side. And the rear too. There's access on 4 sides.
Mhm.
Abby, did you guys do this project that we're looking at, the Aspen Dental and all?
We did.
Is it the same architect or
Did the site
different?
planning, and it's the same architect. In fact, it's the same building. They took the center, starting at Supercuts on the left, and then cutting it off before Aspen Dental on the right. So it's that center, sort of those three sections, and those are the inspiration and the floor plan for the new building. The floor plan's a little different, but the front facade is identical.
And the distance from Route 2A about the same? Yeah.
It is. Yep, we're right up at the 25-foot setback.
Thank you. Anything else, Emily?
I think that's all I've got. I think we can go through the recommendation document. Pull that up.
Can you pull up the site plan again, maybe while we're doing that?
Let's see. I think I should be able to do that.
I guess, the only thing I would add on the site plan, just for your information and clarity, is that we tried to shade everything in gray that was proposed. So anywhere there's pavement now is not hatched, but if we're adding new pavement or a new building, we hatched that. With the exception, I see, of there's 4 parking spaces that are immediately adjacent to the proposed building that didn't get hatched. But for the most part, the gray hatching is new pavement.
Can I just ask a quick question before we go into the review summary?
Mhm.
The plaza, is that intended to be used as like patio seating for a restaurant, or is that intended to be community space?
Right now, oh, that's up in the air. You know, they had talked about wanting that space to be used for the restaurant. But if a restaurant doesn't end up being the use, or if that ends up being where the urban park is, then it wouldn't be associated with the restaurant.
I think that's a good place to start with the design review. We can go through the Taft Corners 5 of 9. So brief overview, in the Taft Corners zoning district, 5 of these 9 elements need to be provided when a new project is proposed. For their 5, they're doing 1, multiple uses. They have the bank, the office, the restaurant, and retail proposed. The new building is 2 stories. Wide sidewalks are existing and proposed. You can see that on the sidewalk. They're proposing a connection to the main entrance from the bike path, and then entrances on the sidewalks on the north and south side. So they're getting that connectivity. They're proposing to do public artwork and the urban park to meet part of their 5 of 9 criteria. The other option is on-site renewable energy generation. And that's not one of the ones that they're proposing at this time to meet that 5 of 9. So that plaza area could be in part the private restaurant seating and then part an urban park. That might be something that we would want to see more. We'll need to see more specification on at DP to make
Right.
sure it meets that intent.
Yep, and we intend to develop that further as we get along in this process.
I had a question about the new curb cut coming off of 2A to enter the new parking lot. Is that something you need permits from like Vermont Agency of Transportation?
We do. We will need to negotiate that with VTrans.
It's a very busy section of road designed for through traffic to an extent. And there's just a lot of curb cuts. I just didn't know how important that curb cut was to your overall plan or success of the building.
Right. It's something that TD Bank feels pretty strongly that they want to pursue. So we're going to go for it. We're going to try to get it for them.
Is that a one-way?
It's a one-way in. Yep. It's the least onerous of the curb cut types, in my opinion.
So farther down, the other building where Supercuts is located, it does have a right in. It's this triangle where there is a right out. The one that's being proposed is just the right in. So I would assume it would function something similar to how that one
It would. Yep.
how that one functions.
I would suggest you consider making it a sharp enough turn so that people will not be so inclined to try to drive out of it and make an illegal right-hand turn. Not that people would ever do such a thing, but just
They would never consider it. I agree, and that's something that we would do.
Does that left turn lane come down that far from the light at Taft's Corners, Emily?
The left turn lane, what does it
Yeah,
do?
as you're coming north on 2A, coming toward the light at Taft's Corners, there's that left turn lane and a left turn light. Does that lane go that far down? Because I'm thinking in terms of people trying to come off of the north side into that driveway, the way it's created. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. It looks like it's gonna start. It starts as the dashed, and then it becomes the solid full lane for left turn only. So that's something that VTrans is going to be looking in more detail. Our bylaw does have some standards for access, and those will be reviewed elsewhere in the staff report. But I think tonight we should focus primarily on the building.
Okay, fair enough.
But all good questions. So before we start at the beginning of chapter 22, do you guys have any comments on the 5 of 9 criteria?
Seemed reasonable to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good.
Ditto.
The urban park, that's something that you come back to when you're further in the process.
So at discretionary permit, they'll provide a more detailed site plan that'll include how big the park will be, what materials will be used, that kind of thing. So 22.3.1, respect the context.
So Emily, just so I understand your color coding and all here, as you just said, we're going to be looking at this again at the discretionary permit stage where there'll be a lot more detail.
Mm-hmm.
Are you suggesting like the red criteria we skip over?
We can talk about them, and then I think draft recommendations about what specifically you would like to see or that the applicant should keep in mind when pulling together the full detailed set and doing the final details on their building kind of thing.
That would be helpful.
So it seems like as it stands, respect the context is pretty A+.
Cool.
I agree.
I have a comment concern about 3.2 because it's sort of a carbon copy of the other building. There's the 3 sections, but if there's only going to be 2 tenants, I was just curious, what was the thought? It sort of looks like it also has 3 tenants in it on each floor. So I was just curious maybe why that design decision was made, or is there going to be a way of delineating that it's 2, not 3, other than signage?
Right, let me check I just want to see how the elevation lines up with the floor plan. The center, yeah, there's a center entrance that with a vestibule where you'll be able to access both buildings, both sides of the space, and that's going to be in the center. That middle section, really is just I think intended to break up the facade, and
Mm-hmm.
there really aren't going to be 3 tenants. There's only going to be 2.
I don't know if anyone,
I don't know if it is it not advisable to have something that shows 3 sections with only 2 tenants, or
I
can there be a
actually,
false?
yeah, I actually like the idea of the 3 different facades. I would hate to see us start having a bunch of buildings that look like long, elongated one shop and a shorter another shop. And I think your facade actually breaks it up into a much more aesthetically pleasing for me. It's just an opinion, but I actually like the idea you've broken it up into 3.
Yeah, Emily, so what it says specifically is like false fronts are generally inappropriate. So I think where they show on the site plan that one center sidewalk from the bike path to the entrance and then having it break out internally to the 2 tenant spaces, that will help the form follow the function. Whereas if they proposed a bay that had a fake door, fake windows that didn't lead up to anything, that wouldn't work.
I agree. I don't think it really meets the definition of a false front. I think it represents what's going on in the interior, and who's to say 10 years from now they may have 3 tenants in there and they redo the inside and things change.
Abby, did you say that it's an exact replication of what we see down the road?
It's, yes, almost exactly.
I don't know what other members of the HAAC think. I think it does obviously fit context and that it's right down the road. I would be curious when you do submit the discretionary permit or have more in-depth plans to see a little bit of variance as opposed to like an exact copy. I think sticking with what you've been doing, but maybe a little bit different. I don't know, my visual mind, I hesitate to just put the exact same building there. So
Right.
if there are some unique features that don't, doesn't overhaul the complete design, still within the context, I think that would
Mhm.
bring a little bit more variance.
I would agree with that as well, Chelsea.
Mhm.
So-
Me too.
I agree.
I think, maybe simple material changes, things like that, that wouldn't change the structural, but aesthetically it would look a little different would be great.
Yep.
Looks like we have
Material
consensus.
changes, maybe
Pass
even
that
like
along to the architect.
window shapes.
Definitely cladding material and color.
Mm-hmm.
In color to differentiate from the similar building. We always call it Lot 30 Panera Bread, but I'm going to give it a different name. 62 Merchants Row. So respect the context. The HAAC recommends material changes or changes to materials, window shapes, cladding. I'm going to say and or color because it could be a combination of some of those things to differentiate from the similar building located at 68 Merchants Row.
Right. I mean, I imagine the color won't change that dramatically, given that's sort of the color scheme of the surrounding buildings, and that's the color palette that fits the context and the character of the buildings in that area. But I understand what you mean by not wanting a carbon copy of the same building that's down the street. So we'll talk with the team about that, and I'm sure they can come up with something.
Yeah, I like the other building because it shows a slight difference in roof height, so it doesn't look like just a rectangle on
Right.
front. So that adds some character, which I do like.
Emily, are landscaping recommendations later down? Are landscaping recommendations within this section or later?
I think there's something that touches on landscaping a little bit further down. Especially if we're talking about like the landscaping around the urban park. So 2233 provide enclosures. Streets and outdoor spaces like urban parks function best if the buildings provide enclosure. I think landscaping, and size outdoor spaces properly. So landscaping and seating walls should be used to buffer the urban park from the vehicle traffic on Route 2A while not completely severing its relationship to the multi-use path.
My only note with that, if it is a restaurant that goes in there, it will have to get severed, for lack of a better term, just for their liquor license. So I don't know, again, when this is sort of revisited again, we should keep that in the back of our mind, that it will legally have to get shut off, which I don't follow the bylaw, but like that also follows the regulations of the state for the tenant. So it's just my restaurant.
Right. Yeah, noting that in detail.
Does the urban park have to be right on that little proposed area, or can it be somewhat where the existing building
Nope, thanks for the notes. Those are good.
is?
Like elsewhere on the site plan?
Yeah, somewhere's on the site plan in general, and maybe not right up in this little confined area.
It might be. Let's see. An urban park, as discussed in the comprehensive plan, visible and accessible to the public so that it complements other proposed uses. A picnic table for employee lunch breaks is not an urban park. I'm going to do a street view. When I was talking to Abby about this project, what came up was the urban park in front of CVS. So this is probably the only CVS in the country that's got only suburban CVS that's got this type of feature. And I know if you're just on the wrong side of the Google imagery, you still get the imported car center.
Throwback.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. No. There we go. So it's along the multi-use path. There's the retaining wall partially for slope. It provides that buffering. If the restaurant were to be co-located here, it would be understood that they would have their DLC fencing. We would want to see that incorporated materials that it matches, but there would still need to be a fair portion dedicated to the urban park that someone from the public could use. I think locating it to the side or the rear part of the building is less desirable because the emphasis here is this bike path, providing a place for someone to stop and rest. Whereas something that's on the other side might feel private and might not feel like that urban park.
Right. We have quite a bit of frontage too that's not being used by the plaza. So if we wanted to explore putting it on the south side of the main entrance, or even, I guess I would want it next to the building. I don't know if I would want it to the south of our proposed parking, but there's a little triangle of land on the south side. Yeah. I guess I'm thinking more that's not as good of an area.
It could go if this plaza to the north becomes dedicated to the restaurant. If it's to the south, kind of along the bank area, that probably would work nicely. Understanding that the seating area for the restaurant is going to be mostly pavers. If this is a combination of green space and paving, it would give people who are waiting for the bank or working there a space that's separate from the restaurant.
Yep.
So maybe the recommendation could say, consider a second urban park more central to the building or to the south of the main entrance or something like that. Because as you said, if the plaza is totally taken up by restaurant seats and all that, it's not much of a park.
Williston Road, St. George Road. Consider the urban park, consider placing the urban park to the south of the main entrance facing St. George Road, especially if the proposed plaza is for restaurant seating only.
Perfect.
Moving on.
Moving on. And then landscaping and seating walls. It's going to use a variety of colors and materials, but with constraint. I think that recommendation earlier about respect the context probably covers it.
Yeah, we don't really have color and material samples yet, so that's premature to comment on that.
Yeah, and then going down to avoid dead walls and do not use reflective materials, I have the discretionary permit must include elevations for all facades using the same materials and provide material samples at discretionary permit. So that I think can help with 22 through 5.
Sounds good.
Right. Entrances and architecture. Principal building entrances should be marked by architectural features that make their location readily visible from parking areas, pedestrian ways. I would say this is probably going to comply as proposed, especially if it's moving in the direction of the Panera Lot 30 building.
Agreed.
And entrances wayfinding shall be reinforced by the site plan, including sidewalks, landscaping, and the location of functional outdoor areas. I guess here we could say something about that outdoor park and its relationship to the front entrance.
This just made me think of it too, but where's the entrance on the existing building side, on the west side? It's right where the hip is. Is that right?
It is.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't ask that earlier.
Pull this up while we go through. I think that'll help. Relationship to the street, a strong direct relationship. I said complies as proposed.
Mhm.
From the climate, overhead protection. Provide side view, elevations of entry canopies. Sometimes I think on elevations, we've gotten something where like it sticks out, but there might be two, one further down. So some sort of like 3D view where we can see what those canopies. From conflict, service areas, including dumpster and utility enclosures, must be separated. Abby, what's the waste management plan?
To be shared with the existing building. There's a loading dumpster area proposed for where the current bank turn is now, on the south side of the existing building.
Okay, so it'll all be shared.
Mhm.
Okay.
Then where would the loading zone be if it does end up being a restaurant? Would it be from that hip side, from the west side?
I imagine during during business hours, they could use the loading area that's on the south side of the existing building. They could also use the in off hours, I guess would be the east side of the existing building. There's that the driveway, the bidirectional driveway that they could use for some loading.
And is the dumpster to the south of both buildings in the middle, sort of centered? There's a square that has a leader, but I can't
There's
see
a
it.
square with a leader. I just showed the pad. I didn't show the dumpsters, but
So is the cursor is where the dumpster is?
Where's the cursor? Nope, that is an existing some kind of an electric vault. So that's in an easement that we can't touch. Rather, if you move your cursor to the left, to the left of the word loading, there is a dumpster pad.
Oh, I can see dumpster pad. Okay.
So occupants of the new building have to truck their stuff down to that location?
They do.
Truck as in haul or walk it or whatever they do.
Right. And I mean, we can move that pad if it might make more sense to put that on the eastern side of the loading area instead of the far west, just so that the distance is shorter.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, so I just said the HAAC recommends relocating the dumpster pad within the loading area to shorten the distance from the new building to the dumpsters for staff. Provide airlocks, floor plans at DP.
Yep, I think there's a second page in the floor plan that we submitted that shows, I think we do show a vestibule
Yes.
with airlock. Yes.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yep, so the central corridor from the parking second building side and the Route 2 side with airlocks. Cool.
Okay.
Use doors and windows to provide a strong but compatible visual pattern or rhythm.
I'd say that complies.
All
No.
right. Applies as proposed. Shield light spill from windows. This is not applicable. Moving on to roofs. A pitched roof is not proposed. Consider sliding ice and snow. So I think that earlier recommendation is sufficient. I don't know why I can't edit that one. All right, use compatible forms, colors, and materials. Roof colors, etc., should be used on the building and on should be compatible with the building and neighboring buildings. Variation in roof form should reflect the building's function, reinforce architectural detailing, and not be overly complicated. So I think that one variation, the parapet, is compliant. And then we do have that respect the context recommendation from earlier. Hide roof drains. Consider the view from above. So the renderings and elevations shall depict rooftop mechanical and screening. Right now, this elevation doesn't show anything on the roof, so that should be included in the discretionary permit plan set. Outdoor lighting, I added the specific recommendation. The new outdoor lighting doesn't need to match the existing features in the parking lot or the existing buildings were minimally visible from Route 2A. As you recall, there's this whole parking area with illumination to the rear. So I think going with something different for the front that kind of livens up the building and is more 2020 and less office park is probably okay.
Sure.
And then provide that information at DP. Signs will also be reviewed at discretionary permit. And then we go to 22.9. Site planning, respect the terrain is not applicable. There's no watershed protection buffers here. Building a strong street line as appropriate for the area. They're pulling the building up to the road, so it complies as proposed. Leaving the front yard open and then fencing and screening. These last two typically are geared towards the industrial properties or where you're fencing off that front area. Here they're proposing that urban park and plaza. So those two are not proposed or applicable.
I noticed that Northfield Savings Bank next door has a fencing. And is that because they don't have the urban park?
You are correct.
My only suggestion was if there was to be fencing, that it would match that.
True.
Mhm.
I don't think we're gonna propose fencing like that. I don't know why we would.
You have outdoor seating at your potential restaurant. Would you have to have it like Emily had mentioned earlier?
Mhm.
Right.
You have to have some kind of a barrier, so they could do like stanchions and chains or something. But they might want to propose something more similar to this. I don't know.
I would just keep that in mind if you do need to do something, that
Mhm.
there is a strong fence right there, so to keep it consistent.
I'd agree with that.
So any fencing proposed for the outdoor seating area, outdoor dining area, should be compatible with the fence at Northfield Savings Bank. And I say compatible, not identical, because they might want to do something different. And I have seen some places where it's part landscaping retaining wall, part fence where they need to have a gate for egress. So that should give you guys some options. All right. Do you guys have any other questions or comments before we wrap up?
No, there'll be more when we get to discretionary. So,
Sounds like we're off to a good start.
yeah.
Chelsea, you mentioned landscaping. That'll, when they submit for the discretionary, there'll be a full landscape plan that we can look at.
Mhm.
Things like that.
Yeah. So Chelsea, we do have a landscaping chapter that will do something with buffers for the side and rear property line, and we do have a street tree standard for the front yard. So that landscaping will be included at discretionary permit and can be looked at in more detail.
Okay. Thank you for allowing me to learn on the fly
Oh, yeah.
when certain things happen.
Yeah.
That's how we all learn.
Sure.
We're
Mhm.
still learning.
Is there anything about landscaping that should be made a pre-app recommendation, like as it relates to that urban park, or did what I have drafted suffice?
I think what you drafted is fine, because they're going to come back with a proposal that we can look at and think about in more detail.
I mean, looking at the aerial photo you just had, Emily, it looks like there's sort of a tree planting spacing that's being consistent with Northfield Savings and the property down on both sides, that, they might be good to try to keep that consistency there. But I know the plaza certainly would interrupt that pattern. And there may be other reasons why we can't do that, but it would be worth looking into.
Yeah, I think some of that will come together when they are going through the chapter 23 landscaping standards. All right.
So Abby, is it safe to say when you come back to for discretionary, you'll have an answer from VTrans?
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious if VTrans will give up another
I
curb cut.
don't dare put an application in for DP without getting sign off from VTrans first.
That would definitely change things a little bit as far as the circulation and
It would, yeah.
what park area may or may not be utilized if that goes away. But
yeah,
hopefully it doesn't, but we'll see for you.
Yeah, we will. Great. Thanks for everyone's comments on this.
Good luck with it.
Thank you.
All right, you're
Thank
welcome.
Thank you. See you on the 13th, Abby.
Bye.
Bye. Cool. So up next on the agenda is the bylaw growth center form-based code. I fully expect that everybody read every word of all 9 RFPs.
Oh, you had a sense of humor.
I'm still working through them. The timeline's kind of tight on this. Matt is hoping we might be able to do some interviews with consultants next week, and then the decision in consultation with CCRPC will be made probably that first week in October. And then we'll be able to start the onboarding with the consultant. So do you guys have any questions or feedback for staff, primarily Matt, to consider when working with CCRPC on making a decision?
The little bit of looking I did through is a lot of these are out-of-state companies, and they
Mhm.
way out of state, like the other end of the country or something. It would seem, I don't know if it makes sense for a company that at least is New England based. There's at least 2 of them that are in Vermont. There was one in Clifton Park, one in Boston, which I don't know if just being closer and able to physically get to the site impacts the economy of it or the efficiency of any of it.
It might, because having them be able to come, I mean, with COVID throws a loop through everything, but at least if they're able to come for a couple days and do a socially distanced tour on their own or with staff is a huge asset. Yeah, I noticed that too, that some are saying that they're not going to be able to make it at all.
Yeah, I support that too. You know, Vermont firms familiar with the area can look at other Chittenden County form-based codes, so there's maybe some consistency there. I don't really care what's going on in Western New York. Plus, it's always great to have these out-of-state firms come and do a public hearing, and they can't pronounce the street names, and they don't know which way north is. And
Yeah, I think
form-based code is not rocket science. You know, it doesn't have to be somebody that charges $300 an hour.
Yeah, and I think if people are moving to Vermont, or you move away, you realize you're not in New England. So I think if somebody could understand that, what does New England kind of feel? Just having that cultural understanding. I don't know if I'm sure you can learn it, but I'm not sure you want to risk the learning curve.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, when I looked at well, I did like John, I looked at them. Well, maybe John did more than that, but my thought was if they were closer, they could spend more time talking with various stakeholders. And to me, that's critical. You know, the shop owners, the people that live here, et cetera. And I think that's at the heart of much of their research. I hope it is.
Yeah, some applicants definitely put a little more effort into detailing their engagement process and what that will be, what it will be in terms of COVID. I think that is one of the benefits of being able to do things virtually, is if a stakeholder or the consultant can link up more readily. I definitely have one that I would rule out entirely because I feel like they didn't give enough information on what their process would be, and a lot of them are proposing websites and these social media things to really help get the word out. And I think that's going to be really key for Williston.
I know the VHB company, which is based in Burlington somewhere, I believe, they just got a growth award from Vermont Business Magazine that they put out each year, which would imply possibly some proficiency and success in their field to, be one of the high growth companies in Vermont.
Have you got enough information on each of these to do reference checks? I wouldn't hesitate to call a couple communities they've worked with and say, hey, how'd they do?
Yeah, I'll touch base with Matt and CCRPC and see if they're doing any of that reference checks. I do know that the BHAN consultant did Burlington's, and then the Code of Metrics, they did the Hartford, Connecticut. And I know we looked at Hartford's form-based code when thinking about cottage commercial buildings. I was like, oh, cool. They're the ones that wrote this one that we've been looking at and kind of wishing our bylaw looked like.
I looked at the BHAN, or however you pronounced the first was on the list, from Clifton Park. And I liked one of their comments they made about you should almost be shooting for a form and character code. I thought that was an interesting concept, a little bit beyond just straight form-based, if you will, adding that nuance to it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think that goes to Chelsea's comment about understanding our culture, our lifestyle here as part of this.
I don't know if you get, if you go through these and you start Xing off ones that you don't want, or, it sounds like the emphasis on local is important. I think, I don't know if it'd be helpful later, and once you've taken some away, if you would like us to look more in depthly at like your top 2 or 3, that I might be able to get to that a little bit quicker.
Mm.
That's really good feedback. I'll touch base with Matt. I think that's probably something we can do when we have those top 3. I'll send that around via email, and then if you have any feedback, it's going to be a quick turnaround that's not going to line up with a meeting per se. But yeah, I'll do that and send it over via email. And if any info, if not, just to like reaffirm, I don't know what Matt's top applicants are yet, and I kind of want to wait until I've like made my list, and so we can compare. So yeah, I'll do that.
So what role is Chittenden County Regional Planning play in this, Emily? Who's actually making the decision? Is it Town of Williston or?
Ultimately, it's CCRPC making the decision. I think the town does have a lot of say in that decision. The meetings I've been in with Matt and Taylor have been very collaborative. So they're doing a lot of the funding for this project. So, and they're going to be helping us run a lot of the process and work with the consultant. But I think if they would take Matt's opinion very seriously, because ultimately it's going to be our bylaw to adopt.
Now, are these companies, again, because I haven't read all of them, are they going to be proposing some regulation changes or just giving us some ideas? Or
Yeah, so it's going to be a complete package of a bylaw that when their process is done, the planning commission takes that and holds a hearing on it and moves it on to the select board.
Excellent. So one of the criteria would be how well does each of these propose they're going to do that. So, okay.
Some of the companies said they preferred in-person meetings within the confines of the COVID issues we have. But there was 1 or 2 of them, I think, they just said they would just basically do everything virtually, which it doesn't seem like you're going to be able to get the nuances that we might want.
Yeah, I'm definitely reading for an eye if there's a possibility to be able to do both, where they're offering a little bit of both. Even if it's part of the charrette is you go around to different locations in town and scan a QR code and look at a site and look at it through that form-based code lens. So if there's a way we can combine some in-person things for local Williston people to do, we're probably not all going to be crammed into a meeting room drawing on maps together, but there might be some opportunity for some distance. I mean, we were able to do our social the other week, and I think that was a good prototype test run for, can we do something like this in a distanced manner?
Can you remind me when that would roughly start? When they would select feedback from the town? We talking like 8 months or less?
They're probably going to start doing that public input process over the winter.
Okay.
I'm not sure how long it would go. Ideally, some of those events would work great if we can do them outside when it's nice, not when it's really cold. So I think it depends on how aggressive the consultant wants to go on it and what the planning commission wants in terms of feedback.
I like the idea of doing both. I could never get to in-person meetings with little kids. They would
Mhm.
go to bed. So as much as I dislike Zoom, having the ability to contribute is helpful sometimes. You can do it online.
Emily, is it appropriate for us to, given a chance to read these, would it be appropriate for us to fire you some email thoughts in a summary, or?
Yeah, please do. Send those thoughts along. This week is probably best. Next week we'll be gearing up for interviews.
Okay.
So whatever you can get to me this week would be great. And then I'll let you know when we know what that top 3 is going to be. I'll shoot you guys an email. And then if you have any feedback on those 3.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thank you guys for a great meeting.
Thank you for hosting.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing the social last week. That was nice.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming. I hope
Figure out
we're
where the
able to do.
gazebo was?
Yeah, I was thinking the other one, which is like more of a bathhouse than a gazebo, but the humor is not lost on me that the planner who planned the event and looks at maps all day went to the wrong place.
Gets me was, why did someone in that 20-minute period not call you on your cell phone and say, "Where are you, Emily?"
I know. I was like looking, and then I was looking at my phone. I figured they all have my number, but I had a nice little chat with Eric on the Conservation Commission as we walked over. And yeah, I hope we're able to do more of that in the future and hopefully be able to provide food at the next one as COVID
You can give
policies.
us your number and we'll call you and bug you all the time.
If only I could put it on my timesheet. All right, well, I will see you guys on October 6th. September is a 5 Tuesday month, so we have 3 weeks before our next meeting.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Emily.
Thank
Night.
you.
Bye.